Welcome, all of you viewers and listeners out there. I am your host, Amanda Strawhacker. We're joined today by one of my favorite people, Angie Kalthoff. She is the program manager of the Early Childhood Technology Certificate Online Blended Program at Tufts University. She'll talk a little bit more about that. But as we always do on When I Grew Up, we're going to start by thinking about before we grew up. So Angie, hello.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, thanks for being part of the show. So why don't we just get started? Why don't you tell us a little bit about young Angie Kalthoff and what she was like?
Yeah, so I was thinking back, and in order to do my homework for this, because I'm in education and I love homework and learning, I reached out to my mom and had her think about if she could think of some themes that I had in my childhood. That's what I'm going to share today. So some of the themes I can think about are play, and how play was a big part of growing up for me. And I grew up in a neighborhood near the city, so I had a lot of neighborhood friends, and we would play in the yard. I remember we would play yard games like Annie over, where we would throw a ball over each other's house and then, catch it on the other side. And I can remember spending hours doing that, or rollerblading or biking down to the park. Over a house, yeah.
Wow, like a two-story house.
Yeah, so like you had to try really hard to get it over. And then like biking and rollerblading to the park, I remember having a lot of freedom. So the parents were at home and we could just go anywhere, but we'd have to be home by the time the street light would go on, or our parents would have to know where we were. We'd have to check in with them, but we could just go play. Like in the morning, you would tell your parents what you were doing, and then you would go. We had phones, just not cell phones. I didn't get my first cell phone until I would say late high school. I'm playing with neighborhood friends, going to the cabin. I have a lot of cousins who are within like a 10-year age range. So I had a lot of cousins who were built-in friends, and we would play at the cabin and go swimming. I also think about swimming being a part of my life growing up. I was in swimming lessons, and then I taught swimming lessons, and then I was a lifeguard. And at the cabin, we would go tubing and skiing. And now as an adult, I love to wake surf. Ooh. And I just surfed for the first time in the ocean in Boston in September. So that was pretty cool.
Sounds cool.
I guess just like a theme that I can think of is being a collector. So I went to an early childhood STEM conference, and they were talking about the different kinds of play. And a collector is one type of play. Director was another, I think, type of play. There was one that was explorer or adventurer along that route. The only reason I remember those two is because I connected with those two. So like the director was, I don't always have to be the person to make a decision, but I can make the decision. So if I'm in a group of people and no one's making a decision, I'll step in and I'll make a decision for us. And then the adventurer or explorer, I like to travel. So that is also a form of play for me. And so as a kid, I collected rocks. As an adult, I always collect books, picture books to give to my friends who have kids. And then I collect shoes now. So I have souvenirs, and all of my shoes have a memory connected to them. So I guess I also collect my memories and hold them near to my heart.
I love that. And your souvenirs, as I recall, have a dedicated Instagram. Is that correct?
They do, yes. I don't have a lot of followers. The dream, I guess, would be to have shoe companies sponsor it, right? So when I travel somewhere new, I buy a pair of shoes, and I typically try to research a shoe brand or a shoe store that's local to the new place I'm going to buy my shoes at. And if I can't do that, then it's just wherever I end up finding a pair of shoes. But they all have stories attached to them now.
So when you were a child and you had all of these different forms of play in your life, and it sounds like you had like a really beautiful bucolic childhood with outdoors and family and water, what was sort of an aspiration that you held, or what do you think young Angie believed or wanted to do when she grew up?
So education, being a teacher, I would play being a teacher.
Wow.
Yeah, that's one thing. Another one that I would play often was kind of like a maker theme. I liked to build and decorate Barbie houses. I didn't necessarily like to play with the Barbies, but I would like to build their house. So like an architect or maker type role.
Cool.
And then traveling. I was interested in the world, and education is the one that really stuck out as I continued on through life.
So maybe this is a good time to sort of segue into the next question, which is, what do you do now? And specifically, what do you do that positively impacts your community, whatever community means to you?
So I think of community in a few different ways. People who are around me physically, so my like very close community, but the people I connect with all over the world is also my community. And social media has made that really easy to have a sense of community that's worldwide. Go
You
ahead.
in particular, I think, have some of the strongest social media game of anyone I've ever met. You are extremely good at communicating things as an educator and just as a person through social media formats, and your online teaching courses are always so clear and well reviewed. So I wonder if you might have, like, I don't know, a drop of wisdom, especially as we're living in this everyone online all the time for work and play moment of history. How can the rest of us sort of emulate some of your success with sharing a global community rather than just an in-person one?
So I think I like people and having that sense of personal connection with people. While it's hard to do when people are in other cities, states, countries, finding time to connect via video, and it doesn't have to be at the same time like we are right now, synchronous, but there are tools out there that let us do it asynchronous. So like posting a video on Twitter or something like Flipgrid, where we're still able to have that human connection. I have found that to be meaningful for me. I also like to think about my thinking and how it's impactful for others, and thinking about research and what it looks like in practice. So that's a lot of what I post on social media. As I'm reading a book or an article, I try to share my interpretation of it and then connect it to events that have happened or ways that I could see it in practice. There's another tool called Canva that lets me make like really pretty graphics, and so that's what I've been using. If you look on the Twitter accounts that I have, and you see pretty words and fonts and colors, it's from that service.
Nice. So we talked a lot about the medium. We didn't actually get to what you do yet.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm living my dream job right now as the early childhood technology graduate certificate program manager at Tufts. Prior to this, I taught English to kindergartners who were new to the country. And during that time, I was working on my master's in teaching and learning. And that's when the iPod Touch first came out.
Oh, wow.
Right. But even before the iPad, my district received a grant. And then I was able to use them to look at pre-literacy skills and how that might, how technology might play into that. And prior to that, I didn't really think I was a tech person. But as I was working on my master's, I really found that I enjoyed thinking about how technology could impact education. And I wanted to make sure that it was connected to best practice and being developmentally appropriate. And then I learned about computer science, which was something I didn't know about before. So as an adult was the first time I actually started to think about that. And I was seeing how I could bring it to my elementary kids as a tech integrationist. So I transitioned out of the kindergarten role into like a technology coach. That's also the time I found the work from DevTech, as I was thinking about computer science and computational thinking and what it looks like in practice and what I could do as an adult to help my students and other educators. I really found myself looking for research in the field and what was being done. And that's how I became connected with you, like how many bumps later at Infosys. I got to go to a PD session and we started talking there. And then I don't think we've stopped talking since then.
Yeah. That's true. I don't foresee a time when we will.
I was just going to add one more thing. So I think about computer science and computational thinking and what that looks like for younger kids and the access it gives them to being creative and create things that they want. And I think back to when I was in middle school, and my goal at the time was to marry Zach Hansen, right? I have different life goals now. But at that time, that was super important.
Have that life goal.
I have yet to meet him, but I've gone to a few concerts as an adult for them. But when I was, I don't know, middle school age, I created a GeoCities website for Hanson.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yes, and I recently found my Hanson research notebook, so I would do my research in my notebook, and then I would go on the computer and I would create this website. And I was driven by the fact that I wanted to marry Zach. I didn't see it as a technology thing at all. And in fact, like as I think about the way I was creating the website and the user experience and the pictures that I was working with and the code I had to change in order to make the website the way I wanted it, none of that stood out to me as being techie, but it was, right? Like,
Yeah.
GeoCities wasn't an easy site to use, and it's not really around
For people
anymore.
who have never explored GeoCities, can you give us maybe like a 10-word explanation?
How about one? Archaic? Right? It was a platform where I was able to create a website and put out to the world the information I was researching and
Right.
design it so that other people could find it.
Sort
But
of
I
like
think
I'd call it more maybe like a live journal,
yeah,
like like a proto MySpace.
yeah. It's not like the websites we have now for like drag and drop. It
Yeah.
wasn't like that. Yeah. I don't remember the first kind of computer I had or anything about the software or the technical aspects about it. I just remember the feeling I had while I was creating and wanting to share it with the world and eventually get it to him so he would find me.
Well, Zach, if you're out there watching this, just want you to know Angie is a catch.
I'd still love to meet you, but we don't need to get married.
So it's interesting to hear you talk about all of these, experiences that you sort of vaguely had as a child, and now what you do is something so different than what young Angie would have had access to. I feel like I see that passion in your work now, and what drives you to help people today, or maybe another way to phrase it is, what is one impactful change you'd like to see as a result of doing that work today?
Yeah, so I like to work with people who like to think about their thinking and how what they're doing impacts the lives of other people. And that's like a roundabout way to say that I want to help people make impactful change. And
Mhm.
I really focus in on education, and my the area that I prefer to think about is elementary. So pre-K through 5th grade. And if I get even more specific, it's like K through 2nd grade. I feel like at that time, kids are learning so much, and there are so many different ways to approach learning and
Mhm.
help them be creative in what they're making and showing you what they learn. And so through all of these life experiences that I've had and fun side jobs and things that I've created, I think about that as I'm talking with teachers and helping them think about what they can bring into their classroom. And as I have that conversation with them, I feel like I'm learning just as much from them and their experiences as they're learning from me and my experiences. So I just really like to be involved with education, learning, creating, and helping other people think about their thinking.
Cool. That human connection to help us all sort of improve ourselves.
Yes.
Do you have any words of wisdom or pieces of advice for the kids of today who might be a little bit like how you were as a kid, maybe those explorers and directors and collectors who are kind of in a very different space right now, a very different world, but still probably thinking about some of the same dreams?
I would say don't be afraid to try. There have been so many things where when I initially think about doing it or making the jump to try it, I think, oh wow, that's like on the other side of the United States. I can't move there. I can't do that. I'm at home and I'm comfortable. But then I tried it and I realized, yes, I can do that. Or, oh, that's a class that I don't think I'm smart enough for. But then I tried it and I thought, wow, I rocked this class. Like, don't be afraid to try.
Cool. Good advice.